Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another GVN review, and this time we're going to be talking about the Myheroacademia World Heroes Mission anime movie. Now, in this review, I am going to be talking about spoilers, about things that I was really excited about, or I thought was really cool, or things that just made me think. So if you are not looking for spoilers, you haven't seen the movie yet, then I would definitely recommend going to see my non-spoilers review, which is also live here on this channel. So starting with the intro to the cult humorized and its leader Fleck Turn, played by the awesome Robbie Damon. This was super intriguing for me, especially with this kind of cultic theme being a part of a My Hero project, because I don't feel like we've had like this kind of darkness, especially not a darkness that we're not familiar with in a while in the series. So it was cool to introduce kind of a wild, like, dark, mysterious factor to it and see how the heroes match up to that. I also liked their motivation for why they're doing what they're doing, with the quirk doomsday theory saying that basically anybody who has a quirk, it's eventually going to evolve to a point where they can't control it, and that's going to cause basically it's going to be the end of humanity on Earth. So it's really interesting that, I don't know, I've never heard of the quirk doomsday theory. I don't believe it was mentioned in the series. So to have just this random belief that it seems that other people are familiar with, because Deku mentions it later on in the movie. That's just wild to me that like so many people got together to do this, especially people with quirks. So it's interesting. I also like how Fleck Turn, the leader, was able to find other people who shared his similar experience of not being able to control their quirk. And because of that, their lives took a turn for the worse. Whereas instead of saying, hey, I can't control this quirk, I need help, I need to find somebody who can help me, like, possibly achieve that, they just summed it up to, this quirk is uncontrollable, quirks are bad, like, we need to do something to get rid of it. So, in order to eliminate these quirks, they create these things called trigger bombs. And the trigger bombs are used to amplify someone's quirk to the point where they can't control it. And in some cases, it does some really terrible things to the person. And, like, I'm not sure if it's irreversible damage, but it definitely looked like, at least emotionally, there was going to be some damage there. So the heroes all get together and put a global effort together where they have multiple operations in different countries, like in America and San Francisco, and Africa and Egypt, and Otheon, which is a made-up country as far as I know. I looked it up, I double-checked beforehand, so I'm like, yeah, I don't think Otheon exists. But it's somewhere near Spain from what it looked like on the map. And Otheon is where Deku, Bakugo, and Todoroki are going to be based, because that's where their internship leader, I guess if you want to say, pro #1 hero Endeavor is taking his mission. Something else that I really liked about this movie is that the action kept pushing the pace. So as soon as things started to slow down and not come to a drag, but you could feel like, oh, people are starting to get calm, they're starting to feel relaxed. That's exactly when something pops off. Somebody comes out of somewhere and just attacks either Deku or Roadie or some kind of civilian. So somebody's got to step up to the plate and take care of that. So the beginning starts off with everyone trying to raid these humorized bases. And then as we move to just focusing on Deku's story and Otheon, the Deku, Bakugo, and Todoroki are just walking around shopping, and then they happen to see a random bank robbery happen. So I'm like, oh man, I'm like, what a way to just keep people on their toes, because I was fully expecting them to just like walk around and absorb the environment, and they certainly did, but at a much quicker pace than I think they were expecting to. So where Deku initially meets Roadie in the middle of the bank heist, where now he's the guy carrying the suitcase, we initially meet Roadie kind of in a shanty town, and he's getting ready for his day and what appears to be a normal day job. And I really love what they've done with Roadie's character design, where you can kind of see the patchwork on his jacket, and he's a little bit unkempt, although trying to present himself as just a normal citizen of society. And I also love that kind of patchwork design goes into Roro and Lala's designs, which are Roadie's siblings. So that I thought that was really cool, and just a really small detail to kind of put together his whole story of this is where he's at now, this is where he's trying to be, until we get further details. Cutting back to the bank robbery where Deku is following Roadie, I thought it was super awesome. The set piece that they did with Roadie where he's doing parkour. And at first I was thinking like, oh, is that his quirk? Because he's like moving in such like a really cool way, and the way that his like stunt choreography combined with the camera work are complemented by the camera work really accentuates just the skill that Roadie has with parkour. That was probably one of the coolest things I've seen, because I think a lot of heroes in My Hero, they tend to go for either just the straight running on the ground, or they try to attempt to do flight in some kind of way. So it's interesting to see somebody have these kind of like dynamic movements and integrated that into their way that they traverse the environment. But Deku wasn't going to let Roadie be the only one to show off, because he definitely was using Black Whip in some pretty cool ways later on in the scene when he is carrying Roadie after he finds out that, you know, Roadie doesn't know as much about this as it seems. And it turns out that Deku is wanted for murder for killing, I think it's like 11 or 12 people. So he's been put on the wanted list. Wow, just show up to a country and you're automatically on the wanted list. Not a very good start. But the way that he is escaping the police using Black Whip, the way that he traverses the environment and that bridge, that was just a perfect set piece for him to like go in and out of. And really, what's funny is in the trailer for the movie that came out after New York Comic Con, people were saying like, oh my God, Deku's Spider-Man. I can't believe this. Look at him. He's like Spider-Man. And that whole scene definitely gave me Spider-Man feels. They must have known that the movie is coming out soon, because oh my gosh, that was incredible. Especially to see Deku do something like that. I think anything cool that Deku does is automatically like times 10 for me, just because of how like timid and very humble he is as a character. To see him like just go all out and do something super crazy, I'm like, oh my God, yeah, Deku, let's go. So that was really awesome to see. I think one of the most interesting things about this movie is the portrayal of Deku's character to the public, because now he's seen as the bad guy that's killed like 11 or 12 people and is now on the wanted list, which is hilarious because he just got to Otheon and now he's on the wanted list. I'm like, wow, Deku works fast. But to see him like not be able to interact with people, especially because he's always interacting with the public in such a positive way, whether it's saving them or doing whatever he can to make someone smile, pretty much like All Might says. It's so interesting to see him try to avoid people and navigate away from them, just because it would be a danger to him and Roadie, but it would also be a danger to them to try and turn him in, basically. But I also love how Deku stepped up and became the leader between him and Roadie, and was able to give confidence to Roadie, like, hey, I can take care of you. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to do the best that I can. Because as I said in my non-spoiler review, I think that Deku is a very dependable character. And if you needed him to do something, then he would give it like 110%, like plus ultra. He would do it. But I don't think he's a very confident character, at least not most of the time. Because he's always looking to other people like, oh, they're awesome. Like, I don't think I'm as awesome as them. And kind of like that comparison game that I think a lot of us play in real life. So it was nice to see him kind of say, like, you know what? I can't depend on anybody else to do this. So I'm going to have to be the one who's like awesome. I'm going to have to be the one that is great and is going to save the day. And I think he really stepped up to that. And just to see his leadership, I'm like, hopefully we can see more of that. And maybe, I don't know, he can like boot Ida off from being class president and he could be the new president. I would vote for him because he really like stepped up in a way that I wasn't expecting, and I was so glad to see him kind of take charge and really make it his own personal effort, not just to comfort Roadie, but to also tell Roadie like, hey, we can't give this case to the bad guys or to the police because we don't know what's going on with them. We need to consider like all these different options before we decide to go with it. And just the thought process that he went through is really cool to me. Moving a little bit further into the story where Roadie is thinking about the reasons why he needs to get back to his brother and sister, we see his backstory in the way that he grew up, with his father being present during his early years and him really having fun with him. And then after his father left to join Humorize for unknown reasons at that point, he kind of had to take on a father role and take care of his brother and sister. And he was also explaining that he couldn't depend on heroes, at least in his community, to try and save the day or try and make things better, because he lived in a somewhat poor community and they couldn't afford to pay the heroes. So the heroes weren't going to help support them because they weren't going to get paid. And I think that's a really interesting topic of discussion, just having the idea that there are heroes in there are places in the My Hero universe where heroes aren't readily available because heroes don't necessarily get paid for the work that they do in that area. And it's not something that I ever really thought about, or it wasn't something that was like a fully conscious thought, I guess. But to think that certain areas don't have access to heroes just because of a monetary reason is really, really sad, and kind of like grounds My Hero a little bit. And like, please don't ground it. I don't want to think about that. But that's also, I think it makes the story a little bit richer just because it is a little bit more realistic. But really unfortunate that because his community couldn't really afford to pay these heroes, or his area, local government, whatever body that it is, he wasn't able to grow up as well as Deku had because of just how similar his story is to Deku's, with Roadie's quirk being Pino, and Pino just revealing Roadie's true emotions, even if he tries to hide it himself, which he says in the movie is not so much of a quirk. And I think in some ways, yeah, I can see that. So to see like that kind of reflecting with Deku and the way that he grew up being quirkless until he was able to be introduced to All Might, it's crazy to think that how his life could have changed if he had that kind of hero presence. Like, could he have been like Deku if he had like an All Might in his life? It's just an interesting question. So after Roadie finally settles on the idea of betraying Deku, he does end up betraying Deku, and he calls what he thinks is the police or whoever he thinks the case belongs to. And it ends up being a member of Humorize that comes to basically attack him and Deku. So they almost end up losing the case, but they end up like just barely keeping it by a hair. And later on in the movie, when they are traveling across the country to get to Clade, they're able to meet up with Bakugo and Todoroki, who gets a secret message or a coded message, I should say, from Deku before he officially just turns his phone off. Then we get to one of my favorite set pieces when Todoroki and Bakugo show up at the border between Otheon and Clade, and they have the battle between them and Barros, which is the woman, a part of the Humorize cult, that can turn her fingers, like her thumb and her pinky, into a bow, which is pretty sick to think about conceptually. Physically, I'm like, ugh. But it's a cool quirk, though. I will say it's a cool quirk. I'm just like, I don't know how I feel every time I had to do that. But to see that battle between her and then another member of Humorize versus our 1A boys, that was super cool. And it was actually, I think, my favorite set piece, or at least one of my favorite set pieces of the movie, where it's just super dynamic camera work. You can see everybody's quirks in full action, and just the movements and all of the attacks, and it was just a sight to behold. And then to have Roadie on top of that, trying to keep the case safe after having a real connection with Deku after getting attacked In the earlier scene where he's on the phone call, like, hey, come pick this up, Deku's asleep. And for that end up to not be working out, but for their connection to still come out strong. It was really cool to see Roadie kind of like changing his ways a little bit and be like, you know what? I'm going to try and stay on the right path this time. I'm going to protect the case. But yeah, that set piece was super, super cool. And I love seeing it the second time. And I'll probably love seeing it the third and fourth and fifth and however many times after that. So after Todoroki, Bakugo, Deku, and Roadie are able to keep the case safe, they end up going to this lab where they're able to test this chip that fell out of the safe, or just so happened to fall out of the safe after the big battle at the train station at the border. So they put it in and they see that it is a way to deactivate all the trigger bombs so they don't have to worry about it. So while they're discovering this information, you kind of get a sneak peek into each operation globally and the efforts that they're going through to try and either get the trigger bombs away from people or possibly figure out a way to maybe just turn them off in general, although I think they mostly stuck to just trying to get them away from people. And they're also trying to locate them. So I thought it was really, really cool to see such a big hero team kind of spread out and tackling one central goal from multiple locations. And I kind of wish we saw a little bit more of that, especially with San Francisco and Egypt, because I feel like those are two really interesting locations, and maybe even a little bit more of Otheon, since it's a mythical place that are not mythical. It's a location that we're not familiar with because it doesn't exist. So maybe give us a little bit of context of as to where this location could have been in real life or what it could have been similar to. I think that would have been kind of interesting to learn a little bit more about. But I don't think it subtracted from the movie in any way. I think if anything, just having those things would have been additive, at least for me, just to discover what conditions the heroes are working with in a little bit more detail. Another thing that I thought would have been a little bit interesting, but might have made the movie a little busy, so I think it wasn't a bad thing that they didn't go for this, is the fact that Hawks was also a part of this operation in San Francisco, but we don't see him in contact with the League at any point. So I'm wondering, would the League have known anything about Hemorize? Would they have been in contact and have possibly like coordinated some kind of attacks? Or is this kind of like the League's on their own side of the planet? Hemorize is on, well, it has multiple locations, but like having separated organizations, but they're like aware of each other. I was wondering how that would have played out if Hawks maybe had known some more information, or maybe he's looking to the League like, hey, you guys know anything about Hemorize? Like, just wondering, it might be cool to work with them. I don't know. So I think that was not necessarily a missed opportunity, but something that might have been interesting to see. I don't know. I don't know how it would have played out, but something I thought about. As we're getting to the end of the movie and we're wrapping up with a lot of big fights, Todoroki, Deku, Bakugo, and Roadie approach the main or the centralized Hemorize base in order to deactivate the trigger bombs. And something that I thought was super cool after watching it my second time, so I didn't even fully notice it the first time because there's just like a lot to be impressed by and a lot going on. But the second time, I noticed that Todoroki, after using his fireside and then trying to create an ice slide to get into the base, he like does this like hair swoosh to not only just like push back his hair, but also like puts out the flames that are on his face and his hair. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty sick. That's pretty dope. Like if they could put that in a fighting game, that would be my taunt like every time. That's something that I would 100% do. Moving on to the final fights, in particular Deku's and Bakugo, since I thought those two are the most interesting in different ways. First, starting off with Deku's, I thought it was interesting that Deku's wasn't so much a fight until the very end of the fight, which in some ways I wish it could have been done differently so that we could see a real exchange of blows and a little bit more nervousness on Fleck Turn's side. I think that having a one-sided fight, although it can bring up the intensity for the audience who's most likely going to be on the hero's side, I think it's more interesting when we see that both are struggling, but one has just barely got the edge over the other. And we didn't really see Deku start to get his edge until he turned up One for All and was able to break through Fleck Turn's reflective quirk. And that's when I really was getting into the fight, was when Fleck Turn's actually like, oh, I can't just stand here and reflect. I actually have to act in some way. And so him finally interacting with Deku and trying to minimize as much damage as possible while also reflecting whatever Deku's putting out. I thought those were the coolest parts of the fight. Because of the reasons that were previously listed, Bakugo's fight against Serpentis has to be my favorite fight. Now, I have to say right out of the gate, I just tried to explain this and got confused, so I am not sure if Serpentis is one or two people. We're going to refer to them as two people because that makes it easier for me. So, to see Bakugo grapple with these two individuals and to see him have to make some adjustments to his fighting style, even in abandoning his the like grenade covering so that it's just full on, like all out like explosive power, was super, super cool to see. And I don't think we've seen Bakugo go all out like that since the beginning of the series, I want to say. Or it might be maybe in the second My Hero movie. I can't remember, but it was nice to see that again, because I think Bakugo, we don't really get to see the full extent of his power just because his quirk is super powerful. So to see him really have to, I'm like losing the words to describe this, but to see him really like push himself to that point was super, super cool. And then to see Serpentis and the way that he was able to duplicate / maybe there's some mind control, I don't know. But to see the way that he adapted to the battle as well and was able to switch up his battle style, like, oh, okay, Bakugo got a hit there, let me adjust my strategy a little bit, and then let's go back at it again. That was also really cool. And anytime someone takes battle damage and their outfit changes in any way, it automatically makes me think of Dragon Ball Z. Some might also say Samurai Jack, but I grew up watching Dragon Ball Z. It's just, especially rewatching the Frieza saga. So to see Bakugo slowly, his costume get worn down, and him worn down with it to the point where his whole upper body is exposed, and then for him to finally come out on top with the one hand in the air, I loved it. I loved it. I don't think that there was any fight that could top that moment. But I have to say, going back to Deku's fight with Fleck Turn, Deku essentially breaking reality was also pretty dope. That was a really crazy moment for me just to see. I'm like, what is happening? Like, Deku, you are transcending space and time right now to defeat this guy. That's insane. If it wasn't for Bakugo's fight and to see it like really well composed and to see that back and forth struggle and to really feel in it, at least for me, then Deku breaking reality definitely would have taken it from me as like the best moment of the movie. But we can't forget Roadie's part in all of this, with him being the one to actually deactivate the trigger bombs with Pino. That moment was also super powerful in an emotional way for me, just to see Roadie's journey between not so much liking heroes to really taking a liking to Deku to becoming a hero himself. It's just full circle. It was great. And to have him, you know, he might not have done it for all of Otheon, but that's okay because he was doing it for two very important people, his siblings. And, you know, at the end of the day, family is super important to me. So to see that he would go to such lengths to do that for them is super awesome. And that wrapped up Myheroacademia World Heroes mission. It was a really, really cool movie. And I love the way that it worked with the anime in a way that I feel like there were a lot of payoffs. Or in the anime, we had a lot of individualized, like a lot of students were doing their own internships with Deku, Todoroki, and Bakugo working together on their internship. We finally got to see a lot of people work in a group setting, although in different locations, but still working towards one central goal of defeating Humorize that I thought was super cool. And to also see them use what they've learned from the internships and taking that to the movie as well was a really nice payoff for me. And it just made watching season 5 even more worth it in my opinion. I said this in my non-spoiler review, but I'll also say it again here. I am jealous that you all will have or have had the chance to watch this movie in theaters, because watching it with headphones is not going to compare to listening to a Delaware Smash Air Force in surround sound with some socially distanced but relatively close excited anime fans to watch as well, just to feel that energy and also see some really cool stuff on screen. That's going to be a really fun time and just great to get back to some kind of normalcy and a way to get back together with people who enjoy the same things that you do. I know my dub watchers will be excited to hear that the English cast returned to reprise their roles in the show, as well as Ryan Colt Levy, the voice of Roadie's Soul, Christina V, the voice of Pino, and Robbie Damon, the voice of Fleck Turn. Sub watchers, don't worry, because the English sub as well as the English dub will be available in the US, Canada, the UK, Ireland, Australia, and New Zealand by October 29th. So if you've already seen the movie and you watched it in the dub and you want to see the sub, go back and watch it in the sub. So yeah, be on the lookout for showings in a theater near you. And for anybody who lives in a country that I haven't listed and doesn't primarily speak English, don't worry, I will have details in the description down below. Alright, that pretty much wraps up my review, but I want to thank Funimation for giving me the chance to watch this movie in advance and just have some fun. And I also want to thank Geek Vibes Nation for allowing me to do this review and just giving me the opportunity to connect with Funimation. And hopefully we will all work together very, very soon. There are some exciting projects that I can't wait to talk about in any capacity. But if you like this review, make sure to hit the like button so that more reviews get recommended to you. And if you want to have them permanently in your inbox, make sure to subscribe to our channel, where we'll be having lots of geeky and nerdy stuff coming to you very soon. And until then, I wish you all a nice evening or your night, or just enjoy it. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.